Welcome, everyone. I'm Emily Bertrand, the director of our mid-market business here at ActZero. For our second discussion in our 5-part healthcare series, we're going to be talking through a topic you're all likely very familiar with, ransomware. There's no question that as a security practitioner, you haven't lost some sleep worrying about an attack. We know ransomware is on the rise. More than a third of organizations globally experienced a ransomware attack last year. Healthcare organizations across the US were not spared in this number. The typical breach can cost millions, and attackers have realized that hospitals are prime targets. So now more than ever, healthcare leaders need to make protecting their systems a top priority. I have Adam Mansour, our Chief Security Officer here at ActZero, joining me today to talk through the rise of ransomware on healthcare organizations, taking a specific lens on the role artificial intelligence and machine learning can play in stopping these advanced threats. Welcome, Adam. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks, Emily.
Quick housekeeping note before we get started. For those audience members joining us live today, at the bottom of your screen are 3 important tabs. First is questions tab. This can be used to submit questions during the presentation. If we don't cover it in our discussion today, we will get back to you afterwards. There's the attachments tab. This is where you can find links to additional resources referenced throughout the talk. And then the third is the Rate Us feedback tab. We're focused on delivering real value to our customers and everyone that's joined us today. So we'd love to hear your thoughts about the presentation, whether you'd be interested in hearing more, and any other additional topics you'd like us to dive into in the future. So let's get started. Adam, let's talk about budgets. Where should healthcare target spending to avoid ransomware?
I think a lot of the way that healthcare organizations have been targeting healthcare by a lot of different surveys have shown that their top underinvestment, they believe, is in cybersecurity. So they want to be able to target cybersecurity even more than some applications that are core to their business or upgrades. And so you see this huge need to invest. And then you look at the way that they have invested, right? Database security, endpoint security, security awareness training. A lot of it focused on the idea that some of their users are going to click on some phishing email and then everything's just going to sort of break loose from there, right? It's going to infect the endpoint and get ransomware there. And it's going to get our critical database and let someone into that, or the users need to be trained not to click that stuff. And so you can kind of almost interpret from the numbers where the headspace is for most people looking to invest in cybersecurity. And that's, I think, what they're going to continue to target is how they feel they are defending against the adversary coming in. So when we see, security awareness training and phishing tests, when we see endpoint security and when we see database security, we're really just, I think, explaining how they feel ransomware is getting in and going to affect them, right? You don't see a large number of them starting to say, backup and testing and things like that, which they end up doing ultimately when ransomware happens. But a lot of this stuff obviously is very proactive, very preventative type technology, not reactionary. So, of course, the concept is that if that's how they have been investing, and we know we do need to invest in analytics and reactionary technology and things that are going to tell us when something happens, how to quickly respond to it, because we've invested as much as we can on phishing tests and preventative assets on our endpoints and databases. That's where I think the money is going to go, right? Is to the things that supplement or to complement a lot of the manual process of identifying an attack at one of the stages and responding to it. And so you see a lot of people looking at analytics technology, everything from security information and event management to potentially EDR as part of their endpoints, and how do we staff accordingly to have a person at the ready. Of course, a lot of people investing in things like cyber insurance and having to re-up on those things, which are becoming more expensive. So that's going to take a little bit of your money, and also it's going to get a little bit harder to get. So you're going to have to make investments to keep that investment, but a lot of it likely going to be in the analytics space for 2022.
And then AI and machine learning. I think, everyone's talking about it. We have been for years, but I still think it feels out of reach for a lot of organizations. Can you talk us through how these tools actually leverage AI and ML to stop attacks on these systems?
Yeah, in conversations with a lot of CIOs, I've had, every version of claim brought to my attention from vendors on how AI is going to be leveraged. Everything from, chatbot usage within the natural language processing of their, patch management scheme as a form of AI science, or, the ability to make predictive assessments on which vulnerability or risk is going to hit them next. And Obviously, when you look at analytics, right, that's probably the lion's share of where you're going to see the word AI, right? Within, endpoint technology is a way to leverage the predictive analysis on whether something is or isn't malware, right? Quick decisions is what AI is really good at in 2022. How do we make sure that they're taking the right data, the right assessment, and deploying those things within the technology? So on the endpoint front, that's where you're going to see it. On the back-end analytics side, a lot of the algorithms that used to be deployed as rules to alert people to this type of attack behavior, those are slowly being replaced through those technologies by AI vendor to vendor. And so obviously, when you look at the patterns that they're using, the techniques that they're using, the attacker, that is, we want AI to match and be able to find those attacks, the techniques that are coming through our networks and systems, and find and block them, right? And so obviously, when you're prioritizing what your AI should be doing and what it's very well qualified to do, those are two sort of competing things, right? Like, we want the AI to be able to 24 hours a day stop any version of the attack. We need to understand which ones it's actually really good at stopping, right? Is it really good at stopping insider accidents where people are, accidentally sending files in certain locations, data loss prevention? No, it's not, because it's not good at identifying when the pattern is something that was unintended as a human consequence. It's way better at saying, this is much more like attacker behavior that I've seen in great numbers. And if you're not seeing that accident very often, it's very hard to commission AI in that job, right? But then you have other things within the AI that it's very good at doing. Right, we talk about antivirus having updates all the time. Those are just signatures, right? Files that that your antivirus provider believes are malicious, right? And so why not have the AI predict from file analysis and process analysis and all these other things that it's very good at doing? It's very good at consuming that data, identifying those patterns, and looking at anomalies and stopping them. And so that's how it will manifest in the log analytics or the endpoint analytics that you have, right? And there's a way to prioritize that scheme to look at things that are maybe feasible but somewhat expensive, right? How much value is it in the AI telling you which vulnerability you should fix next, right? Very, very low, right? What system is potentially going to be the highest in there, right? Those types of systems, that type of intel is actually not very valuable in terms of prioritizing AI within something. So if you have a vulnerability management program, don't go and get the AI version of it, right? But if you have an endpoint or analytics tool, AI is going to be a much better engine than, say, your typical single variable analysis coming out of most SIM product or endpoint product.
Does that prioritization change from organization to organization based on where they might be at in their, cybersecurity roadmap and maturity?
I think you're definitely going to have to look at which investments you have yet to make, right? A lot of people that are in a refresh cycle for endpoint might be looking at the new technology as a way to complement it. Others may have already invested for 2 or 3 years and basically now are at a point where they've got an opportunity. They can't necessarily move that investment away without significant cost. And now any new technology there that may give them an edge is not going to help them. So you're always going to be in a budget constraint for which tools you're even given the opportunity to look at. Certainly, if you're looking at personnel and you're looking at analytics and you're trying to create a combination of SOC efficiency or SOC team enablement, right? Your AI is going to have a really good effect when you start with the analytics that already has it in there, instead of trying to layer that on top. So yeah, it really does affect which processes you can even look at these tools and these capabilities at in your life cycle, right? Because if you're in a 3-year contract for something that doesn't do it, mm-hmm. You're not going to get the extra return from the AI is not going to be able to displace the already sunk costs in your existing contracts.
And then if you prioritize those items, I know that AI machine learning can do a lot. It can't do everything. What else is left afterwards?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the job you should have in relation to this, right? Most people are, maybe given something that's a little too early stage where they're given a lot of the analytics, a lot of the features of this, but they're left driving it, right? A lot of these tools, analytics tools, if they have the capability of machine learning, for example, in it, but those are just things you have to leave a data scientist to connect to get the value out of, and you don't have a security practitioner to kind of weigh against that. You're going to spend a lot of time getting the outcome of that problem, right? And so when the outcome of those tools or services are measured in your organization, what you should start to focus on is what would be left when I did this? What would be the thing? If you're spending too much money to get the value out of the machine learning through an analytics tool, you didn't have anything, left over for yourself to focus on. So mostly what you should be left with, if the AI and analytics has done a really good job at identifying threats early within those programs, is the proactive, right? Vulnerability management, which is a bad place to put AI, right? Continuing to do security awareness training, and of course, incident response testing, validating that these programs are indeed, if they are detecting something, that there is still communication that has to happen in and out of the organization, right? Our incident response guide, for example, if you Google ActZero incident response plan, you'll see free copies of this stuff that we distribute for you to understand your relationship after an attack, right? After something happens. Certainly looking at things like the rise of ransomware and understanding how to harden systems, right? It's very important to understand that the proactive doesn't just mean threat intelligence. It means going and configuring your systems with policies we've known about for years that are likely not in place on your servers and workstations that can really help cut down the attack surface, cut down the likelihood, and more importantly, the impact, the breakout if something like this does happen. Because ransomware on one machine is a problem, ransomware on all your machines, that's a catastrophe, right? And so we want to make sure that the blogs and the other things we've written about how to do that are giving you line of sight on what we mean by proactive and which configurations we're talking about, because there's a lot of config in Windows and things that you could deploy. You got to focus on the really important policies that can really tighten down the processes and the users and the network activity right on the asset itself. So all that stuff is still going to be leftover work. If you've prioritized AI properly and you're consuming it properly, you're still doing the human-driven setup, hardening, removal of vulnerabilities as your vendors tell you about them.
But the goal is that the AI ML that you've layered on is giving you more time to do a really good job, right, at those things.
Precisely. If you haven't saved time and money, then you probably,
I mean, so with that, how do you confidently vet out these tools claiming to bring AI and ML instead of just buying another tool that's adding to the noisy alert problem?
Yeah, certainly, understanding how AI engines and machine learning work is hard to demonstrate, right? It's hard to look under the covers and be like, this engine runs on this and that engine runs on that, right? You do need to focus on the outcomes. You need to focus on the delivery of blocks, or the delivery of alerts, or the delivery of a false positive ratio, or something they can demonstrate. Engage with vendors who are willing to do a proof of concept, who are willing to show you in a time frame that is very simple, right? There's a short time frame, simple exercises that demonstrate the value of AI over and above traditional means. I think a lot of people will say, this is an AI-driven approach, or there's machine learning or something as part of a component in the back end, but they're unable to demonstrate how that's accurate, how that's fast, how that cuts down on noise. And so proof of concept should include everything from false positive ratios and different types of cyber attacks that they can defend against, but they should even be able to demo that, right away. Right? What is the impact of your AI? How have you measured it? Because if they haven't measured it and they don't understand necessarily how it's contributing to it, then it's simply a line item that might have been added for marketing purposes, or some sort of data sheet matched to their competitors, right? And unfortunately, that's not going to help you measure whether they've prioritized, like you have, which features are important. Maybe they've only prioritized vulnerability management, and they've done something low value for you.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the AI ML, it's irrelevant if there's no outcomes, right? It's a means to an end for more efficiency, more effectiveness, right? So I think that's
a tool.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. That's all the time we have today. We're already just over 15 minutes. Thanks, Adam, for taking some time out of your schedule to join us today. For more info on the role that AI and ML can play in stopping advanced threats, you can check out our resource library at ActZero.ai. Adam did mention a couple of those tools during the discussion. And thanks to everyone that has joined us today. If you do have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out at info@actzero.ai. And someone from the team will get back to you shortly. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.